Hello, class. Welcome back to Mr. Martin and Mr. Walter's Flip Classroom. Because it was such a hit the first time, we're bringing you part two.
This is the exciting conclusion of the introduction to imperialism.
Make sure you guys are following along with this video, just like you were in the first one, with your Cornell note packet, Intro to Imperialism, underneath where it says Video 2, Causes for Imperialism. Mr. Walter, why?
Imperialize?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you think about it, to take over another country culturally, politically, and socially takes a lot of effort. And so why do it? Well, we boiled this down to three big reasons that you need to know. And reason number one is essentially the fact that it boils down to that everybody else was doing it. Once one country starts imperializing and taking over other countries, suddenly nobody wants to be left out. They all want a piece of the action. And so what you should write down is that nationalism will prompt European nations to go rival each other, to build empires and essentially compete over this. Mr. Martin, would you like to talk about the second reason?
Surely. Second reason number two, the Industrial Revolution. All right, as goods came in from the colonies around the world, countries such as Great Britain and Germany wanted new markets for their raw materials, so that got them even more interested in developing and dominating lands in Africa, India, and the rest of Asia.
Yep. And the third reason is that Europeans at this point felt that they were racially and culturally superior to the rest of the world. And this will become known as social Darwinism, which we'll talk a little bit about as we move forward.
Alrighty, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Nationalism and militarism. All right. By the mid-1800s, European countries were competing for power on the world stage. And what you're looking at on the screen is a map of the world in the mid-1800s. The more military bases you had around the country, the stronger your nation was to be. For example, if you were to look at a map of the world today, the United States has a military base or a military presence in just about every country around the world. That makes the United States a very prestigious power. Some countries around the world would say the United States is an imperial power to this day.
Okay. Going back to the second big reason, new markets. Essentially, raw materials were needed to feed the factories. So Europeans liked getting raw materials cheap and then turning that into a product that they could sell for an expensive price. And so out of Africa were such items such as rubber, copper, gold, very important things. Out of India was cotton and jute.
Mr. Walter, what's jute?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Mr. Martaran, because that will be a vocabulary word that you may need to know on a quiz that you may take tomorrow. So jute is essentially a type of fiber that you can use to turn into a lot of different things. Paper, it's kind of like a burlap, things like that.
All right, and if I can, underneath Africa, one other resource, Mr. Walter, that I was just thinking of was ivory, tusks from elephants. A lot of supplies came out of ivory, such as combs, toothbrushes, hairs, scrimshaw, very rich commodity in ivory.
Also, crops from around the world, such as banana, oranges, melons, other exotic items. Europeans were getting used to this, they were getting a taste of this, and they wanted these goods as often as possible to be funneled back into Europe cheap so that it can be sold at a high price. And so essentially, all of these new markets are going to force Europeans to exert their power and force on other countries to try and get this cheap. And then the third one.
All right, social Darwinism. Now, you guys undoubtedly have talked about Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution in your biology class. Right? The thought process here is that Europeans are successful, they're a more dominant race, and therefore they're going to be able to imperialize. Now, if you think about the imperial countries, and Mr. Walter, what were those world powers at the time?
We were looking at Spain, Great Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, and the United States.
All right, what do these countries have in common? Well, number one, at this time in their civilization, they're highly industrialized. At this time in their civilization, they're predominantly Christian and they're predominantly white. Okay? And this has that idea of survival of the fittest. And the big idea is that these industrialized Christian white countries saw their duty and obligation to civilize the savage world, such as Africa, India, and Asia.
Yeah, they at this point they think that their success is attributed to the fact that they're Christian and white, and they don't realize or understand the things that we understand today, such as Jared Diamond's theory of geographical winners and losers. And so they falsely attribute their success to their race, and their religion, and so they feel as though they need to project this onto the rest of the world.
And if I can, social Darwinism, what the European countries do here is going to create all sorts of tensions that are still problematic in Asia and Africa today, which we're going to talk about in the fourth marking period.
So essentially, social Darwinism, the quote that you should get down is this idea of survival of the fittest. And although, as I just learned, Charles Darwin never said that, but essentially, these European nations that come in and take over other countries will justify it in their own minds by saying, well, we beat them, and so therefore we deserve this. And of course, we know that that's going to lead to a whole bunch of problems. The very last thing.
There's three types of imperial rule. All right. The first type of imperial rule that we're going to talk about is a colony. Okay, and a colony is simply an imperialist power that rules directly over a region or area. Very easy example for you guys to remember. Think back, Great Britain and the United States, the 13 colonies.
Okay, the second type is called a protectorate, and this is when the colony has their own government, but they have to pretty much okay every decision with the mother country.
A good example there, think of like a puppet.
Yeah, like a puppet government.
All right, and the third and last term that you're going to need to know is what's called a sphere of influence. And all this is, it's a region or country where another country has exclusive trading rights.
All right, class, that is the second video for our flipped classroom series. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you got all the information you needed. And how do we turn this? Oh, here we go.